Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want.
Nobody expected Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith to team up against the socialist wing of their own party. But that's exactly what happened. They turned their fire on Zohran Mamdani and tore his arguments apart line by line on live TV.
Democratic socialism is like a dating profile. Things look great until you meet up in the real world. For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want.
Maher compares democratic socialism to a dating profile. It looks great on paper until reality hits. He points to Bernie Sanders' failed single-payer push in Vermont, then questions how similar ideas would work in a city of 8.4 million people. His broader argument is that Bernie, AOC, and Zohran Mamdani represent democratic socialism, not mainstream democratic politics. And the working-class voters increasingly recognize the difference.
I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist.
Mamdani openly embraced socialism, making it central to his platform. Maher's point is simple. When New York's mayor calls himself a socialist, Democrats have a much harder time claiming the party is centrist.
I'm not a fan of anybody who's for socialism instead of capitalism in the United States of America. I'm a registered independent, and the last time I checked,
you're a capitalist.
Hold on, that's right. You're damn right I am, and
you
very,
make too
very
much
proud
money.
of it. I'm not apologizing for it to a soul. I worked very, very hard for that. Let me be very, very clear. I'm a registered independent. I believe in capitalism, and according to the polls, more folks are in favor of capitalism on the independent side than obviously the Democratic side. So that would make me on the outside looking at Mamdani and AOC or Bernie Sanders. That's not who I vibe with. I will tell you I'm a fan of Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland. I will tell you I'm a fan of Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania.
Stephen A. Smith made his position clear. He is a capitalist and does not align with Mamdani, AOC, or Bernie. His frustration is that Democrats are drifting away from where many voters still stand, which is why he points to figures like Wes Moore and Josh Shapiro as a stronger path forward.
Kids think that stuff that happened before their appearance on the planet didn't really happen, but it did. We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland, but then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism, and now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's Socialism for the 21st Century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zohran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
Maher points to Poland and Venezuela as real-world examples. His argument is simple. Capitalism and socialism have produced very different results, and those outcomes are already visible.
But in the end, what it comes down to is we've got a bunch of people within the Democratic Party that are not representative of what the Democratic Party was once representative of.
Okay, but I got to stop you as a friend. You say that, however, you're not answering my question. Okay, if they're not really the leaders, if Sean Hannity's wrong, which I know you'd love to point out to all of America that I'm wrong, then who are the leaders? Who are the people that take them on?
I didn't say you were
John
wrong.
Fetterman, I can't name one.
I did not say you were wrong. I said they shouldn't be. I didn't say they aren't. They are not.
But you
they shouldn't be.
acknowledge they are.
Because Sean Hannity, one of the preeminent voices in all the media, plasters them on the screen every single night to convince most of America that those are the leaders for the Democratic Party. I promise you, if you sat around and most centrist-style Democrats, there's no way on earth they would vibe with the progressive left.
Stephen A. Smith argues that today's Democratic leadership no longer reflects the party many voters once trusted. Maher's broader point is that moderates keep losing ground to louder activists, pushing working-class voters elsewhere. That's why Stephen A. sees Fetterman as one of the party's strongest links to ordinary voters.
Yeah, but he talks about how it's actually bringing people together. Trump voters, Mamdani voters, how it's overcoming the odds. And he took a speech that was just about celebrating a championship, and he made something bigger about it.
Okay. Well, it doesn't make me forget that his wife loved October 7th on Israel.
Oh, come on. Have you had him on the show?
We ask people like that, Ro. They never come.
I'll talk to him. I think
I would love that. I think he should too.
No, I mean, I think he should come. You have a conversation.
I would love to talk to him.
He's a smart guy, and I think you would find.
I'm not saying he's not a smart guy. He went to the White House.
Yeah,
I mean,
he took.
I know.
Like a fiddle.
He went there, but he can't come here.
Yeah. He should come here.
He should come here. Oh, so should AOC? So should all of the Democrats.
Yeah, they should come. You don't bite. You're fine.
Maher goes straight at Mamdani, not just on policy, but on his judgment and political alliances. Critics argue that Mamdani's positions on Israel, his reluctance to appear on unfriendly shows, and the more extreme voices around him could become major ammunition for Republicans through 2028. Maher's challenge is simple. Come on the show and defend your ideas.
I'm talking to the Democratic Party. Zohran Mamdani is coming. He's gaining traction. I am not a socialist, nor do I aspire to see socialism in the United States of America. I don't know anywhere in the world where true socialism has worked. I don't see it. I don't know where communism has worked. I don't see it. And I know the president of the United States is calling the mayor of New York a communist. No, he calls himself a socialist. That's what I'm going to go with. He's a democratic socialist. He swears it's working in New York City. I'm not so sure. But listen to Mamdani with this quote right here. Let me read this to you. Quote, I think a democratic socialist can get elected anywhere across this country for any position. I think we're seeing a hunger that is not just felt by New Yorkers, but frankly, by Americans from coast to coast for a new kind of politics, one that puts working people at the heart of it. This is what Mamdani is saying. He's talking about working people because he knows that's the language everybody wants to hear. He knows they're not interested in hearing anything else. And if you're the Democratic Party, you got to pay attention. You know why? Because your leadership in the House and in the Senate could be in a world of trouble.
Stephen A. says it plainly. Mamdani has figured out the one phrase every voter in America still responds to working class. He knows that language sells, moves crowds, and connects with voters in a way Democrats have struggled to do for years. Critics argue that this is what keeps him at the center of modern democratic politics, packaging socialism in the language of populism.
Now, I think less for Schumer in the Senate than it is for Hakeem Jeffries in the House, but nevertheless, it could happen. Remember, Hakeem Jeffries endorsed candidates. His candidates lost. Zohran Mamdani's candidates won. So, by the way, because of that, what does that mean? That means he's gaining traction and he's gaining power. And when we look at Mamdani and what makes him successful, let's understand this. As a politician, what is he doing? He can raise money. He can organize young and progressive voters. His endorsements carry real weight now, as we've seen. He can beat the establishment, or he can beat establishment Democrats in deep blue districts. These are the kind of things that he's established already. This is 7 months on the job. And when you consider the fact that his candidates that he's endorsing are the ones winning, and Hakeem Jeffries and the candidates that he's endorsing are not winning, this is the man that was the successor of Nancy Pelosi. When Nancy Pelosi endorsed you, you usually won. If that's not the case with Hakeem Jeffries, how do you think that's going to bode well for him in the House?
Mamdani's endorsement is becoming more influential inside the party than Hakeem Jeffries. For Maher, that signals a major power shift. The activist wing is gaining ground, while moderates keep falling behind.
The Democrats don't come, and yet they got my vote. It's just odd, isn't it?
Yeah, why is that? So what is that all about? I mean, you get some Democrats.
Democrats are cowardly.
Yeah.
They're cowardly. Their party is being taken over now by, every day I hear about a new, very radical. I feel very good about, like 10 whenever years ago, like I did lose fans because, I wasn't going to go along with some of this crazy stuff on the left, too. I didn't change really on what I thought about the right, but I can't sit and just not notice stuff, which people seem to want to do because it's all about my team or your team. But, there's some crazy stuff. When we're cheering for the Intifada, I got to cut, I'm out.
Maher's message is blunt. Democrats are too afraid to challenge their own activist wing. He argues that this silence empowers figures like Mamdani and leaves moderates increasingly sidelined.
Just on this show, my show, Straight Shooter, with Stephen A., when we had Senator Alyssa Slotkin on the show the other day, she talked about new leadership being needed within the Democratic Party. Knowing that Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are there already. Now, Chuck Schumer's been around a long time, and few raise money better and more effectively. But who knows what's going to happen if AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the representative out of the Bronx, who knows what's going to happen if her and Zohran Mamdani really become a partnership and a pair? And he's out there campaigning on her behalf. What is that going to translate into? These are the kind of things that we got to concern ourselves with now. If you're a Democrat in the United States, particularly in New York City, Zohran Mamdani is coming. And if he's coming, what does that mean for the rest of America? Because I got questions. Where has socialism ever succeeded? If so, tell us where that is. How is it going to succeed in New York? How are you going to sell that in a capitalistic society? You might do it in New York with young voters. What about the people in the suburbs?
AOC and Mamdani are becoming the face of the party's activist wing. Critics argue that their growing influence could reshape the Democratic brand and further weaken moderates.
What about them? You really think this kind of message is going to resonate with them? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here is this. If it resonates within the Democratic Party, but it doesn't have a snowball's chance of resonating in a general election, then you're basically handing the presidency to the GOP in 2028 as well. That's what you're doing. Because the party, the Democratic Party, will have been perceived as being fragmented. That's what I'm seeing when I see Zohran Mamdani. That's what I'm looking at, and that's what I see when I see his ascension taking fold before our very eyes. Is he right? Affordability being a real problem? You're damn right he is. Is he right that the working class has been ignored? You're damn right he is. Ladies and gentlemen, over the last year, the top 1%, when you look at some of these people and what they bring to the table, about the top 10 richest people in the country, they've generated nearly or more than $500 billion for themselves.
Stephen A. warns Democrats could repeat 2024 and 2028. His point: activists may fire up the base, but elections are won in the center, and socialism could push those voters away.
There's Democrats and there's Democrat socialists. I mean, those are two distinct parts of the same party. I mean, they are obviously in a coalition together, but people who are democratic socialists make that distinction. They say, I am a democratic socialist. That's Bernie Sanders, that's Mamdani, that's the mayor of Seattle, a number of them.
And so far, it plays in big cities, but there's no evidence yet that you can take that outside of major metro cores in this country. And I think one of the fascinating tests of the 2028 campaign for president is there going to be somebody that reflects those views that can play beyond a New York, a Seattle, now a Washington, D.C.? Look, Bernie Sanders is 0 for 2 running for president, okay? So it had been tried previously, and it hasn't worked. So the question is, can this play on the road somewhere else, South Carolina, New Hampshire, or Nevada, beyond a big city? It hasn't so far.
Bernie Sanders went 0 for 2 in presidential races, and Maher sees that as proof democratic socialism struggles nationally. His point is simple. It may work in progressive cities, but it becomes much harder to sell to voters across the rest of America.
Whereas over the last several decades, people have been lucky if they got a $9,000 raise, spanning decades. That is what Mamdani is speaking to. That is what he's focusing on. That is what is resonating. But in the end, what it's going to do is serve to divide the Democratic Party. It's not going to have any effect on the Republicans as it pertains to what their plan of action is, because they're going to ask you to choose between capitalism and socialism. Before all of that, it's up to the Democratic Party to find a way to make a decision. Who's going to lead the party going into the future? If it's Zohran, it's socialism.
Stephen A. agrees that working Americans are struggling. But Maher's point is that recognizing the problem is not enough. The wrong solution could make it worse. Critics argue that is exactly the risk with Mamdani's approach.
Statehood for D.C., I'm for that. Get rid of the Electoral College. Okay. Can I read you the ones that I think are crazy?
Sure. I mean, I may not agree with them either. Here,
universal health care, no premiums, no copays, no deductibles. They tried this in Vermont. They couldn't get it to work.
But you can do it nationally. It's worked in Taiwan. It's worked. It has.
Taiwan is not a state, Rob. I hate to say it.
No, but look, it's worked in Canada. We pay twice as much for health care as any other industrialized country, and we've got the worst healthcare outcomes. If you had a single payer, if you just expand Medicare, Moynihan wanted to do this. If you expand Medicare for everyone, and everyone has to pay a little bit,
why couldn't it work in a state like Vermont? I mean, they've also proposed it here in California, and the budget would have to be like $800 million. It would be like twice or 3 times what we pay for everything now.
The U.S. Congress is not going to end private healthcare in this country.
They're just not.
Maher rejects Ro Khanna's healthcare argument by pointing to the scale and cost of Medicare for all. His point is simple. What works elsewhere may not translate to the U.S., and voters keep rejecting plans they see as unrealistic.
Unless somebody that resonates as effectively is able to step up to the plate and ensure that the Democratic Party is not going to be at the mercy of the mayor of New York City. That's what this comes down to. Did you see what else Mamdani said? He said, quote, "We don't have to ask ourselves what life looks like if a socialist wins. I won last November. And over the course of these last 6 months, what we've delivered for working people are the very things we were told were impossible. And we've done all of these things while also delivering the lowest recorded crime in our city's history. That's what it looks like to have democratic socialism. And what you're seeing is that New Yorkers experienced this for 6 months and made the decision that they wanted to see more of it on the national stage as well. I'm not buying that yet, but it sounds damn good. What I want to know is that when you freeze rent, what else have you frozen? Have you frozen the price of equipment? Have you frozen maintenance? Have you frozen those things?
Maher's point is simple. Freezing rent creates costs elsewhere. Critics argue Mamdani's promises sound good politically, but the numbers become much harder to defend once the real costs are included.
Because those things still need to happen, and it costs. Nothing's free. And if you're talking about taxing, and more taxing, excuse me, you're going to run businesses out of New York City. And then ultimately, where's the money going to come from? To develop a middle class, let alone pay them. That's how I'm looking at things. Obviously, he's looking at it a bit differently, which is why I'm doing this segment, because I can't wait to talk to him. I've been anxious to have him on the show to ask him some of these questions. I'm waiting to see whether or not he's going to accept it and what he's going to have to say once he ultimately does. Because in the end, the money has to come from somewhere. Nothing is free, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely, positively, nothing is free. If you're not paying, it's because somebody else is. And if you want to say it's the wealthy that's going to be paid, well, if they're taking their asses out of New York City, who's going to be here to pay it? Eventually, it'll trickle down to that middle class that was supposed to be being spared.
Stephen A. Sell. Point is simple. Nothing is free and someone always pays. Maher argues that if high earners leave New York, the tax burden shifts downward and public services eventually suffer.
Somehow, some way, we got to pay attention to where the tea leaves are and where stuff is being dropped. You, the Democratic Party, you got to come together. You cannot, listen, this is what socialists in this country on the Democratic side are doing. Their mentality is, yo, flow with us. Otherwise, you ain't going to get our vote. And we going to convince people not to go to the polls for you. Here's my point. Last time I checked, you're still in a binary system. You vote one way or the other. Where you going? Where's the Democrats that's going to look at the Democratic Socialists of the party and say, excuse my language?
Maher argues that the socialist wing is gaining too much control inside the Democratic Party. Stephen A. His warning is simple. If Democrats let their loudest faction dominate, they risk losing national elections.
If the Democratic Party becomes the likes of Zohran Mamdani, who, by the way, I like. I'm not trying to throw any shade on him or anything like that, but if the Democratic Party becomes him, you have no chance. You have no chance on a national basis in terms of the presidency. In Senate seats in the House, you have no chance.
Stephen A. Sawinval. His warning is blunt. Democrats have no chance nationally if they keep moving toward democratic socialism. Maher agrees that the party is losing working class and moderate voters while figures like Mamdani and AOC gain influence. Their message is simple. Unless moderates push back, Democrats could keep losing the House, Senate, and presidency.